what it's going to be when I finish before I even start. By looking at it and seeing where it's curved, where it's thick, etc., and knowing what kind of a form I want to make, I should be able to predict not only the shape, but size as well. I'm going to predict that I will make spear point. First of all, the style was predetermined, as I indicated earlier, by what I'm used to making. So I'm going to make a spear point that will look like this. And the flake is quite thick, or this tool is very thick and a bit curved right now. Not only will the point look like this, but it should be fairly thin. Well, to do this, I'm going to have to remove a lot of flakes in the right sequence, in the right order, and from the right places. So I end up with that form, but I also end up with it thin. So now this is a process that I have to concentrate on. In the meantime, as I do this, I want to make more of these double flakes. The next possibility. So that scraper's on now. No longer useful scraping tool. And I need to very, very carefully prepare edges in the surface to thin it down without losing the size, and at the same time allowing me to make the shape that I drew there. There's a nice double flake. I'm starting to remove thickness. You can see it's getting thin here. So I'm starting to remove thickness. But there's still a thick area here. This is where I've got to be very, very careful, because this material, as it gets thinner and thinner, it becomes easier and easier to break across the middle. All I have to do is hit it wrong one time now, and be able to make that large point that I had in mind. Still getting some nice usable flakes. I've removed a lot of the thickness. It's pretty flat now. It's still got a little bit of curvature in it. And it's time to take its form. It'll be the tip here, or the base here. And now I've got to move flakes that are going to go right across that surface and flatten it out quite nicely without removing too much edge, because if I get too narrow, then I'll lose that form that I'm after. So this is where I start preparing it quite well, shifting to the antler again, where I can strike from fairly sharp edges and remove flakes that run fairly well across the surface. So I have a lot of edge preparation with this, even with the antler. There's a flake that comes all the way across from one side to the other and really flatten that surface out. There's another one. Down towards the end here. And I'm just about to the end stage. It's gotten flatter. It's now not curved at all. It's much thinner. And it's taken on the shape I had in mind. Now, to finish these edges here, this would work all right. But I'd like it a little sharper and a little straighter, so that it's a better chance of working even better. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm now going to transfer from large antler to the deer antler tine. Instead of striking the material using a percussive flaking, I'm going to actually remove flakes by pressing against the edge with this antler and remove small, thin flakes. Small doesn't mean that they won't go all the way across the surface. How far they go, I can determine by how I push the flake. Now I'm going to take and hold the biface, the brink, in my hand like this, in my left hand, and I'm going to put some lead protection. I'm going to take this antler tine and remove small flakes. Now, right now, I'm just preparing the edge to actually remove the flakes from across the surface. And I'm going to place the antler tine against that edge and push inward and change the angle downward, and it's going to remove a flake from the surface here. And that went all the way to the middle. How far the flake goes is going to depend on what angle I use and how hard I press. And I don't want to press all the flakes all the way to the middle or all the way across. It just depends on what I need to do to the surface to make it regular. So that one I want a short flake, and I got a short flake because of the way I was pressing and the force that I was using. That's one I want to go a little bit further. So I have to press inward a little more and a little further. Okay, and went all the way to here. And I'm just going to continue doing it. Now each time I remove one of these little flakes, there's a good one that stayed together. A pressure flake, as we call them. It takes a little bite out of the edge. But not very much, just a tiny little bite. And you can see it's going to leave very sharp, straight edge. Now I'll continue doing this around this point on both faces from both sides, so I can make it quite regular. So that's just about what I have in mind for the final form. The final edge, I have a little edge here that has to be cleaned up a little bit. Now the final thing I'm going to do to finish this point is produce the notches, make the notches down here in the corners, because that's the style of point that I said I was going to try to make. So now I'm going to produce notches in the corners using this little spatula-shaped antler. And instead of making it flat or the tip, I'm going to use vertically against the edge, and it gives me the strength of a thick piece of antler, but the depth of a very narrow piece of antler. So I can, at least theoretically, be able to make some really narrow notches, which will match what I had drawn of my invention. Now this is where I've got to really concentrate, because it's very easy to make a mistake here. And all I do is remove one major press flake, which leaves a concave spot, and then turn it over and rub the edge a little bit with the antler, and remove another pressure flake from the other side, which takes a little bite out of the edge, and just go back and forth doing this. I have to be very careful to make sure that when a flake comes off, it has a sharp edge on the inside of that notch, because if it doesn't, then the angle will get too steep, and the same physics that were involved in making the first flake will not allow it to be flaked any further. So there, in just a few seconds, it's a really deep, narrow notch. And all I need to do is one other. What has become clear to me over the years is that flake like this is subject to the same law as everything else in life, and Murphy has a lot to say about it, because it never fails that if I'm going to break a point I'm working on, I don't break it on the second notch when I put the most amount of effort into it. And so I've got to be very, very careful now, because it's also getting weaker in a sense if it's narrower and narrower as the notches get closer together. I think I'm going to stop right there. And this now has shape, at least shape that I thought I was intending to make. A flat, fairly symmetrical, and notched at the corners. Here is the drawing that I did of the flake that I started with here on the side. and the point that I was intending to make. And here's the one that I actually produced. You can see it's a little longer and a little narrower, slightly different, but pretty close to what I had predicted I would make. See on the edge. And the final finished projectile point. Wherever you are in this world, the same procedure, the same physics were involved in the breaking of stone. And you can see this in some of the archaeological materials from different parts of the world. You have, in this case, there's a hand axe made out of flint from England. There's also some very fancy knives that were made in pre-dynastic Egypt. In France, 20,000 years ago to 40,000 years ago, a culture called the Lutrian made some very, very exquisite flake stone objects. You have the same kind of stone objects in other parts of the world, in North America, South America, Australia. Wherever people needed tools, we found stone that they could make those tools out of. And so it's something that was done internationally, everywhere. A lot of people don't really quite understand that about 99% of human history is expressed in the ground only by flake stone tools. In the last 2 million years that human-type folks have been making stone tools, it's only in the last 10,000 years we have anything but stone to look at in the archaeological record. And so by better understanding the processes in which people and human forms actually produce tools and how they use them and what's left over at the end after they're through using them, it's only through those understandings that we're going to get closer to understanding the whole evolution of humanity. To me, it's quite a thought to try to think of what would have happened in this planet had not been stone that break in this way. Would humanity ever actually have evolved? That's a question I can't answer. But without breaking stone and stone that breaks in a predictable manner, I'm not sure that human beings would evolve to what we are now.